Hi everyone, I just wanted to touch base with you this evening just a little bit. I know we're going to have a Zoom meeting, but there's not much content that is incredibly difficult this week, in my personal opinion. Like tonight, we're literally going to be talking about personalities. You're going to go out and take the Big 5 personality test. And I know you've covered personality, or you should have covered personality, values, and beliefs. We're moving on to values and beliefs on Wednesday. Today we're talking about personality, and we're talking about how your personality adapts from your personal life to your professional life, and trust me, it does. Have you ever had anybody where you have a family member and they give you that typical voice? Let's talk about answering a phone, right? Have you ever been in the house when your mom answers the phone and she's like, "Oh, hi, how are you? It's so nice to hear from you." And then if you call, it's, "Yeah, what do you want?" That's what I'm talking about, the personality shift from personal to professional. We all behave just a little bit differently in our professional lives than our personal lives. So tonight's lesson, I think, is pretty interesting. I think personality is pretty impactful. So instead, what I wanted to talk about, because there isn't really a lot of major content or confusion, I guess, on the content, is more what I'm trying to get around to. So I wanted to make sure I covered your paper, because that is the biggest portion of your grade for this session. So I want to make sure I cover your paper. I've put it all on Canvas, I think, pretty clearly, but I just released the paper that you're supposed to read, the article, in the project module tonight, so that you have it. But what I'm looking for, just a roundup again, this is all in Canvas for you, so it's nothing new. But what I need from you is to take that article, read through the whole thing. I know it's 12 pages long, but you can do it. I got faith in you. Find some time or a nice quiet place. Take some notes. What I'm looking for you to do is give me, I don't need an abstract. I don't need an outline. I only need a cover page. I need an introduction. Tell me a little bit about who Jack Welch is. Tell me a little bit about what position GE was in. Were they struggling? Why did they hire Mr. Welch? Things like that. It doesn't have to be 6 to 8 paragraphs, but it probably shouldn't be like a half a paragraph either. I'll get a good introduction. It's going to set us up to say, this was a little bit of the background, and here's what I'm going to tell you about now, how this transition went. Next, I want the mechanisms of change. And this is where I typically take off most points, simply because I'll get people, the whole concept of this article is about how Jack Welch led GE through the whole change process. And I'll get people that'll give me their 4, 5, 6 mechanisms of change, and they literally list them. They'll talk about one mechanism of change, then another one. They'll literally list them and give me like a sentence on each of the 5. So my mechanisms of change section are like maybe 2 paragraphs long altogether, and that's it. And that flabbergasts me. So let me be very clear. This is the main component of your paper. There is no other major component. It is the mechanisms of change. I want to know how he utilized these mechanisms of change. So if you list each mechanism and then give me a paragraph or 2, more than likely, to thoroughly explain what the mechanism is and how Jack Welch used it, it would be a minimum of 2 solid paragraphs per mechanism of change. So if you're speaking about 5 of them, that should be at least 10 to 12 paragraphs. So people often give me like 8-page papers altogether, and that's bare minimum effort. And I'm looking at them, and they very, very briefly list the mechanisms of change and don't do anything to tell me how Jack Welch utilized those particular mechanisms to assist the employees at GE to accepting, and not only accepting the change, but being successful through the change. So let me be very clear. This is where most people go wrong. So a little bit of insight. Give me more content on this mechanisms of change. Not only list them, but thoroughly explain them. Then it says, what other two mechanisms of change would you have utilized? So the ones that you don't focus on in the paper themselves, list two more that you would have done if you were in that position and you were Jack Welch. What two of the mechanisms of change would you have utilized to help people progress through that change? Lastly, or before your conclusion, in the article, it talks very clearly about what Jack Welch considered his A team. So on the explained paper, it says very clearly, what would you have done to be on the A team? This is simply a paragraph or two to tell me that you understood completely what it meant by being on this A team and what you had to do to be part of that A team. So explain that a little bit to me, and then give me a conclusion. Again, a conclusion is not 1 to 2 sentences. It is a solid paragraph or two saying, hey, because of all these things that we talked about, Jack Welch did a fantastic job leading GE through a very tumultuous time, through a period of change, which is very tough for most employees. And he did it very well, utilizing these mechanisms of change. So that's really all I want for your paper. It doesn't have to be 12, 13, 14 pages long, just 8 to 10 pages. It has to be an APA format. It has to have a cover page. It has to have in-text citations. If it doesn't have in-text citations, it earns a 0, because you have to tell me where you get this information. Even the article I'm giving you can be cited. Will be cited, I should say. Then you should find me at least 2 other sources, but in-text citations would be last name and year. Say I came out with an article in 2017, that's what the in-text citation would look like, would be author's last name and year. And you can look this up on OWL, Purdue, there's all sorts of websites. I included some of those websites in the PowerPoint that I made for your paper, but there's a host of websites. But you guys are all in the bachelor's degree now, so you should know how to properly cite an APA paper. So there's the in-text citation. Anytime you see stats, anytime I see 108,000 people or $217,000, anytime I see a stat, you did not go out and get that information on your own. Somebody else researched that information and published it. So every time at the bottom of the paragraph, if you should only have cited sources in one paragraph for one source. So at the bottom of that, you should have the in-text citation, which is just the author's name and the year. And then in your references section, that should be on its own page. It shouldn't be at the end of the paper. It should be on its own page, separate page. And it's literally going to have hanging indent. It should be Miller 2017. The name of the article, which is always indented. GE's Jack Welch, blah, 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 whatever his title is. And then it's going to be hanging indent, which means it is indented 5 spaces. It's always double spaced. All your APA papers are double spaced. Retrieved on April 3rd, 2020 from blah, 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 your URL. Everyone, of course, most of you are going to find sources online, except for your article, but even your article is online because I have given you the PDF format of it. So they'll also have author's last name, year, the title of the article, retrieved on such and such a date from such and such a date. If you went in to look at it today, you would still use that URL and utilize the information here. But again, all sorts of helpful websites to source things and cite things and make references and follow APA format are provided inside the PowerPoint for the paper, as well as I gave you a template for APA that's already set up with everything there to make your life easier throughout this time. So the paper, everything that I want in the paper with special attention over here to these mechanisms of change. That's the whole point of the paper. Citations in the text all should point to a citation somewhere in your references. Any questions on this individually, send an email and I will get back to you as soon as possible. If you need anything clarified in the project module, I will also do that anytime. Just ask me specifically. I need to have specifics of what you are struggling with and I will address it again. Thanks. See you guys all later at 8 o'clock. After that, I will see you guys next week and let me know if there's any questions on the material. I think the material is pretty straightforward though, so I'm not going to have too many instructional videos. I will have supplemental videos inside of the PowerPoints as well as the modules, but anything else you need specifically, I will address. You need anything specifically addressed as far as the content, let me know and I'll walk you through it. Bye guys, stay safe. See ya.